Hello, welcome. Peter Melton here with Deb Ozarko and our special guest, Michael Shaw. We got to do an introductory interview with Michael about his process in making the documentary Living in the Time of Dying, which dared to look at our current predicament of what's happening to our systems and our planet. And here we are. Deb Ozarko wrote a book called Beyond Hope and a bunch of podcasts and articles dealing with how we grapple with all of this. So Deb, welcome, and Michael, wow, here we are. You put your documentary out almost a month ago now. It's August of 2020 right now, and how does it feel to be you, having taken all that in and then put it back out? But here you are, August 19th, 2020. What's it like to be Michael Shaw?
Well, I feel it's a bit of a surreal feeling at the moment. I'm still, having just released that, I've just sort of coming back into a little bit more empty space around my life, outside of the drive to complete that. So I think I'm still landing, still early days. I'm still landing. Yeah, is what I'd say. But I've had beautiful feedback about the doco too. You know, a lot of people have been moved to tears watching it, and you know it's been really touching to receive that kind of feedback.
Yeah, thanks. Tell us more about that. So you mentioned in the other interview that you went on a 10-day silent retreat, maybe Vipassana? Was it a Vipassana?
Not as organized as that.
Okay.
Not as organized as that, but you know, same principles, if you like. Yeah.
Take yourself
more
away.
More organic than that.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
And so you've received obviously feedback now that the movie's been out. Tell us a little bit more about the feedback and how that's felt in your body and in your heart.
Well, a lot of people, I was surprised, but a lot of feedback about Stan's ceremony story. A lot of people were really deeply touched by Stan's ceremony story at the end of the doco, where he's talking about his first ceremony as a boy, which was really just being present to nature. And his grandfather was with him and just sort of slowed him down and got him to look, and, you know, nature came alive. And I felt like I'm lucky where I live. I live in a very, you know, beautiful part of the world, and I get to go out, you know, into the forests or down to the beach, you know, if not daily, then, you know, certainly a few times a week do I get to do that. But it just struck me from some of the responses that people feel quite separate from the nature around them, you know, quite separate to the living world that's around them. And when they heard Stan talking about it, I think they were really touched. It touched something in that. That's my interpretation of why that piece was so touching for people. But you know, a lot of people, I think, just felt too that they had been feeling the same things, and they didn't feel so alone when they saw someone else going through it, and, you know, grateful to, you know, to resonate with someone who's in the same kind of place, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and you mentioned in the other interview too that time is a weird thing now, and that you're not in the old world of capitalism, if you will, where there's this big push to win and succeed and get it out there. And then you did this silent retreat, and you're like, I'm sensing this almost like I did that, but I'm not attached to it so much.
Yeah, it's a you know, I mean, look, there's so many difficulties that are around at this time, and you know, so much grief, so much loss, you know, the loss of, you know, in the natural world, and is beyond comprehension, the pace that it's running at. So not discounting all of that, I feel in my system a much deeper freedom to simply be than I have ever felt before. There's nowhere to get to. And you know, even these hierarchies, you know, maybe it's a man thing, where you kind of put yourself somewhere on the pecking order, you know, when you're with people and, you know, I'm down there or I'm up here, even the hierarchies, that whole thing, it's just, I feel like so much of that is just melting away. It's like we're all in this together, all at the same time, no matter what we're doing, no matter what we're earning, no matter how many spiritual retreats we've done or we haven't done, no matter what our attainments, we're all in this thing together now. And it's a shared humanity that you know, that really does wake me up daily to what's important.
Mm.
You know, I'm sure you both can relate to that. You know, that feeling.
Yes, absolutely, about what's important. And you know, like I mentioned in the last interview about this whole COVID thing that's been coming up too. It's been an interesting it's been interesting observing how, you know, I hear you talk about how we're all in this together, and that seems to be one of the taglines that's going around globally about how we're all in this thing together. And in some ways, it seemed like that in the initial stages of the COVID lockdown, that we're all in this together. And, you know, there were reports about the canals in Venice clearing up and the skies clearing. And I certainly noticed about the skies. I noticed that here, and it was quiet. It was lovely. It was disorienting. You know, whenever I did go out for a drive, the roads were empty and it was beautiful. And one thing I noticed too is that there was far less roadkill on the road too. So the animals were getting a break too. And there was something really, like I said, disorienting, but also really beautiful in that. And then things started to slowly open up. I'm not sure, like I know the US is having a really hard time with this pandemic. And I think that Australia is doing well and Canada is doing well too. And so things start opening up. And now the people who I knew who had a really hard time slowing down initially actually fell into the groove of slowing down. And now that things are ramping up again, they're really excited to get right back into business as usual. So as I mentioned in the previous interview, I just see that as a sign of the collective consciousness of where we're at and how that's just another symptom of the inevitable collapse and extinction that we're talking about. And so I guess what I'm getting at is that people seem to have they gravitate towards the word hope, hoping that things will get back to normal, hoping that, you know, there's going to be a techno fix, hoping that the Green New Deal is going to work and somebody's going to fix it. And my curiosity, I guess, with you, Michael, is, you know, your documentary was very realistic, which is something that I'm incredibly grateful for, because there's inevitably, in everything I read or everything I watch, there's always something that says, it's really, really bad out there, but if we blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And so I guess I'm kind of going organically here to get to the question, because I don't really know what it is. It's just coming out of me.
Right.
It's about hope and hopium. Like you didn't provide us with any in that documentary, which I found very refreshing. And I'm wondering how it was for you to be so raw and real in that respect with everything that you presented there. Because you didn't present us with any hope or hopium. And you also, for me, it felt like it wasn't, it's really bad, but we can blah, blah, blah. It's really bad. And here's how we can live.
Yes. yes.
So I'm curious, just to kind of let you, I'll just hand it over to you and just let you carry on with this train of thought.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a profound doorway to walk through that one, isn't it? And
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and I know you've well and truly walked back and forward across those, across that path many times. I was lucky enough to have Catherine Ingram in my life for right when I was coming into this, and who held me in the place of don't give it up, give up hope. And I think my personal interest, because I don't think we have any, so I don't have any interest in sort of gravitating towards what's not real. If I thought that there was real hope, then I'd be the first one out there in front of it. I don't see that it's based in any reality. So I want to live in reality.
Yes.
And when you live in reality, then what are the possibilities from that place? Like what opens when you come back into the place? I mean, the truth is, and I'm sure that I've heard you say this as well, Deb, but the truth is we're all going to die. We're always all going to die, regardless of whether there was a, climate catastrophe or, we're all born with death coming at some point, sooner or later. So it's a full, and, of course, years of spiritual work where you sort of, the idea is to contemplate your own death and realize, where we are on the scale of time, but it's here now. We can't get away from it. And I think I'm just more interested in what happens when we go with reality and how to live in the face with our feet on the ground, looking straight ahead, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. That's really beautifully put. That makes so much sense, because I feel like there's a lack of groundedness with hope. I have a lot to say about hope. I mean, I wrote the book Beyond Hope. So.
Yes. Yeah, I figured.
And I know what the way it's really, you've just articulated it beautifully. Like hope is, I don't know, like I just find that for myself, when I let go of hope, which I recognized as a diluted form of denial, when I let go of it, I just felt relief, actually. I felt immense relief inside of me that I finally, I feel like hope is the last holdout from reaching acceptance. And there's such a sacred, I don't even have the language, but there's a sacredness to letting it go and reaching that place of full acceptance. And life just, I finally understand what presence actually is.
Yes. Yeah.
And like the work of Stephen Jenkinson, right? To be hope-free.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Carolyn Baker, amazing work on this topic too, and others. But it's like, we never even dared to really unpack death, I don't think, for ourselves, right? And so we're just, it feels like as a greater species, we're just beginning to unpack death, or what does it mean to live with death in mind, which was a tagline for, Guy McPherson and Carolyn Baker wrote the book Extinction Dialogues, daring to talk about this and to live with death in mind. And so many spiritual programs talking about that life isn't the opposite of death, that birth is, if you will, the opposite of death, that are all within this thing of life. And we're beginning to reframe that for ourselves. And when we reframe it, like you were saying, Deb, hope is interference.
Yes. I mean, I think it's good to, like, there's something about this topic too, that it kind of, in order to give up hope, there is also an embrace of sadness and fear. So it doesn't come without sadness and fear, and maybe some longing for the past where we didn't have these feelings. It's not a state that you kind of move into and let go of an old state. It's kind of all messed up together. And I don't think, I feel I just want to sort of say, giving up hope doesn't mean the absence of grief or fear or reminiscing or any
Absolutely
of it. Yes. Yeah.
I feel like, yes, absolutely. And I feel like if anything, it allows more of that to emerge.
Yes. Yeah.
More grief, more sadness, and also more tenderness.
Yes.
More cherishing of
more
moments.
Cherishing.
More presence.
Yeah.
You hit
And
it earlier
presence.
that's what COVID, well, I guess this whole climate thing started me down that path, but COVID, boom, COVID just brought it so present, because the analogy that came for me is I'm on a hike and I can't look out over the vistas anymore, right? I can barely see the step in front of me. And in that presence, I realized how much I had future focus.
Yes.
And how much I had future focus with my work in climate change.
Yes.
And not just my own life, but that's so much energy on what's going to happen in the future. That when COVID hit, I found I've been just blown wide open with my creativity within this presence, that it's like, it's now. It's now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, because there's no certainty. Not that there really was before. There was familiarity, and there was what we were all comfortable with, and now that's been shattered. Even though there's this mad push to grab onto the fraying threads of what's left of it. You know, people like ourselves know that it doesn't have a long lifespan anymore. It's like trying to, I don't know, breathe life into something that's well on its way to dying. You just can't. You know, it's time to let it go, but that's not going to happen. So
hospice, right? The word hospice is, and what's your take on that, Michael? Where do we find ourselves, and how do you personally move into this next phase?
Yeah, well, it's a good point. I mean, I'm thinking of Catherine, who talks about this. It's like being in hospice with a well body. So we get the benefits of a well body, but the experience of being in hospice. And I mean, I feel like I'm a student of the times. So, you know, I feel like there's learning every day around how to be. You know, some days where I feel my natural tendencies to impatience or irritation come out, you know, that get examined under the microscope of, you know, is that necessary now? You know, times where I do just completely forget about what's going on altogether and get very caught up in wanting this or wanting that, or just basically forgetting about where we are. And then it'll come back with a wave. You know, I'll watch the wind blow over a leaf, and I'll just, you know, just feel the beauty of it and the preciousness of it, and, you know, the passing nature of experiences like that. And it stops me in my tracks. But there's no sort of straight through line, other than, as I said, you know, I feel like I'm a student to the times, and, you know, to do the best I can.
I want to say, when you say that, what comes to me is a student of the moment. Right? That all there really is this. And we've always known that, quote unquote, right?
Yes.
Plaque on the wall and everything, be here now. But what does that really feel like embodied? And I had the experience today. I went and had lunch at the beach and I'm just finishing lunch and just looking at all the people.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm just like, people, wow. Right. Bird, waves, that there's so much beauty that we've learned to take for granted.
Yes. Yeah.
And gotten so lost in our disconnection to each other, to
Yeah.
ourselves, to our creator, to nature,
Yeah.
to all of
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And gotten so, the forgetting has come back so blatantly.
Yeah. 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 But those moments are precious when the reminders come about the preciousness of what you're seeing. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things this the pandemic has shown me too is how much I took for granted. And now, when we were all forced into social isolation, and at that time, my partner of 20 years had just left me just before the pandemic.
Wow.
So it was, I was already going through the shock and the grief of all of that. And then this pandemic happened, and it really was, it was a massive catalyst for personal growth very quickly. And it showed me, like I said, how much I had been taking for granted. And that's why now every relationship I hold as so sacred right now. And it doesn't matter what our differences are anymore, because the love and the connection to me is far more important than anything else. So there's a lot of good that's coming out of this awareness of biosphere collapse and pandemics and all the other stuff that's unfolding. And it's just, I feel like a student as well. I feel like a total newbie, because you just never know. You think you can, I've been talking about this for a few years now, and then the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh my God, a whole other series of learnings has been occurring and continues to occur. And it's very humbling. I'm finding all of this is incredibly humbling. And it's also really showing me how much love I have for the people in my life, for the animals in my life, for what's left of the natural world. And just like when you were talking, Michael, about the wind blowing over the leaf, it's just noticing all those little things. I don't know, they seem more important now than ever. So I think that when we stop taking things for granted, it just brings this beautiful, tender sacredness to life. And now that we're navigating biosphere collapse and imminent extinction, along with the uncertainty of our global civilization falling apart because of this pandemic catalyst, we have a lot of opportunities to really be present, because it's like we don't have batteries for the flashlight to look into the future anymore. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. I have a question for you, Deb, that I'm wondering from after you say that. So obviously the heartache of a separation after 20 years, when you're carrying that alongside direct seeing of what's happening in the larger world sphere, do they feel like the same grief? Do when you've got one grief on top of another grief like that, how do you manage that?
Well, it's, if you asked me a few months ago, I would have said not very well. But now I've got 6 months of space between it. So I'm able to, I have a little more clarity around it. And I recognize things about the relationship that were it should have ended a lot sooner than it actually did. So there's that clarity. But the grief initially was, yeah, I think it's, I would say definitely comparable, because there was, again, there's the future focus. So if I think about it from the grief that I experienced when I came to the realization with those dreams that I was having about the ocean, and finally I accepted it, it was overwhelming, because I knew that there was no future to look forward to anymore, and I needed to find meaning in my life in the face of no future. And we're so conditioned to be future focused, work for your future, work for your retirement, get married, have kids, blah, 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 the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's all future focused. Everything, be educated for the future.
Yeah.
And then, with
work
my
for your
relationship.
retirement. Yeah.
Exactly.
The whole thing. Yeah.
We're never present, because we're always focused on the future in the present. So
live your life so that you might get to heaven, right?
Yeah. The ultimate future focus. The ultimate.
Do your spiritual work, and then maybe you'll become enlightened,
Yeah. Or you'll have a better life next time around, if you go for the reincarnation. It's never about this one, is it? Yeah.
Exactly.
You hit on something, Deb, that what are our sources of meaning? Right? That the future was our source of meaning, that I'm going to get there, that I'm going to have the success, I'm going to get the validation, I'm going to get the girl or the job or the money or the whatever, right? And then I'm going to be complete. And so it was always just out there.
Yeah.
And when the future is foggy, when we pull the future out, which we've done here with COVID in particular, it's like, whoa, where's my source of meaning? I don't get it from my work right now. I don't get it from my travel right now. I don't get it from my future right now.
Yeah.
And it feels like, for me, it's forcing my source of meaning to be now.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate challenge, because now is very disorienting.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, it is when you're future focused, and
right, when you're future focused, but now that
when
the
you're
future
when you're future focused, I mean, even tomorrow is future focused. So I find it disorienting still. I mean, I'd love to say that I'm fully present all the time, but then I think I'd turn into a pillar of white light.
Well, you're just going to the future. Right now you're present. Look at that big grin on your face. You're beaming right now. Right? But,
right. Yeah.
So we just stay with the now as much as we can, and then we laugh at ourselves when we catch ourselves thinking about tomorrow or next year or 20 years from now or anything, and have ways and mantras and practices to bring us present, right? That's how it is for me. It's wow, what a great conversation, and to allow ourselves the time to sink into this. We still got a half an hour in this interview to stay on this and to continue to pave a trail for people to feel into this.
Well, I'm curious on this topic of meaning. How are you finding meaning in your own life, Michael, with all of this stuff unfolding in this crazy reality we're living in?
Well, I mean, I've just heard you refer to it a couple of times, Peter, so we may have a bit of background in common, but I spent a lot of, and I know you've spoken about, you did a lot of inner work earlier in your life, Deb, as well, but I grew up, in and around ashrams for a long time, and, mountains of personal therapy, trying to deal with my own, tendencies, I guess, or disconnection from people, or sadness, or whatever it would be. But and there was meaning that I was finding in that. But as it's turned out, as I've become aware of what's going on in the world, as I've really opened my eyes, I don't find meaning in those places in the same way that I did. So a lot of that meaning evaporated, and I love how Michael Dowd, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Michael Dowd, but he's awesome. But when he he has this sort of semi-religious take on it, where he talks about the natural world as the greater thou, when we approach it as the greater thou and not the lesser it. So I feel like a lot of my meaning making is of resonating with the beauty of nature, saying goodbye to the beauty of nature, being present to nature as it changes. And can I love nature as it changes? Can I stay in a loving relationship with the natural world as it goes through these changes that we have created as a species? To not hate myself as a human. All that feels like genuine meaning. And I look back at the meanings that I was making previously, and they feel like so, I mean, I guess they've all helped me in a way, but it feels like so much dust now, compared to this focus that's present. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that, you know, that hating of myself or hating of humanity. One time a line came out of me that was like, I want to have empathy for my species.
Yes, see.
Right? And it's like, wow, where'd you come up with that? Right? It's like, because we are this naive being, right? That, and another analogy I use is we're third graders and we've been put in front of a 1,500 piece puzzle. Right? That we don't seem to have the ability to deal with complex issues. And yet here we are all of a sudden going, huh? What do you mean what we've been doing isn't working? What do you mean we're running up the credit card earth and I've hit my limit? Right? What do you mean I have to give up my luxuries and my conveniences? I was born on the party train and I know nothing other than that. And now you're telling me I have to jump off while it's going? Right? And then all these sources of meaning that were linked to all those things that were the party train. And just so much. Wow.
I loved that piece of my interview with Stan. It was probably one of my favorite bits of the whole experience, when he was talking about, you know, we're children of the earth, and the mother earth loves her children, you know, no matter what the trauma, no matter what's happened, the mother loves her children. And there's something about that it still resonates. The beauty of that statement still resonates. Like, so even as we, you know, who knows if we're going extinct or not, but certainly there's going to be a massive loss of population. Things are going to be, you know, very, very different, you know, if we don't go extinct. But that idea that even in that process, the earth loves her children, all of her children, all life forms. But of which we're one. The earth still loves us, and there's something in that I just find relieving when I think about the sort of the incredible narcissism, stupidity, violence, you know, degradation, you know, that this species is possible, you know, that this species, you know, lives in those kind of ways and has done, which is why we're here, just to remember that the earth still loves the essence of us somehow gives me something.
That is gorgeous. That is gorgeous, because you said earlier, this tendency to want to hate myself for being part of this tendency to want to hate my species for what I've done, what we've done to the mother. Right? And that very human feeling of hurting your mother.
We can hate the state of mind. I think we can hate the state of mind that brought us there, but not the species, not the essence of humanity somehow. Do you know what I mean? Like there's this massive mistake we've made as a you know, collective here. But you know, we're better than that. You know, so somewhere at heart, I think we're better than that. Yeah.
Yeah, staying on that thread, this feeling of that in even in this mindset, to say I've harmed my mother is creating this separation that we've bought into, that I'm separate from the earth.
Yeah.
Right. And here lies, I think, the grand unraveling is that we bought into the separation mentality. And I think at the grandest scale, we set it up that way. That somehow life decided to let it be okay for a species to try to figure out separation, right? Amidst a very confusing storyline, right? Where we strive for love, but love is the most confusing thing you could ever dream up, right? And we get this big dose of separation that we think we're separate from everything, and that we're supposed to do this on our own. And then we wonder why we feel alone, right? And we try to connect with this feeling like we're all one and we're all in this together, but it doesn't quite make sense and it doesn't quite click. And yet I am the earth happening, right? At this very moment, Deb and I are working on a collage for me that helps me to remember that I'm not just Peter, right? That I am in fact the whole human family happening. But wait, I'm the whole earth family happening. But wait, I am the earth happening, right? And we learn to self-identify with not just Peter, who's trying to figure out this crazy game, but that I'm in fact the earth happening. And then we go another level. I'm the earth and the sun happening, right? If the earth doesn't fall in love with the sun, none of this happens, right? And then it's even bigger because there's a solar system that's happening. There's a galaxy. I am the galaxy unfolding as a solar system, as an earth sun, as an earth family, as a human family, as a Peter, right? And when I dare to self-identify with all of that, all the way back to the grand mystery, right? That we are the mystery emerging 14 billion years as we understand it, continually emerging. And this is the cutting edge. This now is the cutting edge of the universe emerging in this one thing called Peter, and this one thing called Debbie, and this one thing called Michael. And that brings me that same kind of, that saying, the mother loves her child.
Yeah.
The mystery loves the process.
Yes.
Which is me.
Yeah. Beautifully put. Beautifully put.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that when you were talking about the separation, Peter, I mean, I write a lot about that in blogs and in my books about the separation. And I look at how this COVID reality that's unfolded has caused even more separation between us. And, like I mentioned earlier, how there's this dysfunctional view now that expressions of love are about social isolation. I can't even say the word because I don't resonate with it. It's about social isolation, wearing masks and gloves and not hugging each other 6 feet apart and blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, we're just creating even more division. And one thing that I've really noticed is that it's polarizing us even more. So there's a lot of dogma that's attached to this whole cultural narrative that's new and unfolding globally. There's the people who buy the narrative without question, and then there's the people who resist it unflinchingly. And so there's so much polarity.
Yes.
And I don't consider myself, I don't buy into it, and I'm not resisting it. I just choose to live differently. I choose to look from a more expansive lens, transcendent, if you want to call it, and just recognize that this is not love. Love is connection. We're a tactile, physical species. We need that physical, tactile connection to feel meaning
Mm.
as a species.
Mm.
You know, we're no different than any other species where there's tactile, physical connection. And so the way I look at it, I feel like, and I've said this already, you know, a couple of times, but I just feel like this is just another sign of how close we are to our end, however that looks. I just feel like this is just another massive sign of, yeah, closure for our species.
Mm. Mm.
So that goes just kind of following the separation thread. And I know like it's it's not super cheery thinking, but
We didn't sign up for a cheery interview, I don't think.
No, we didn't. We didn't.
I just,
Yeah.
you know, when I feel like when I can get, well, in the beginning, I can tell you, I got really worked up when they started making masks mandatory. I actually had a panic attack the first time I wore one. I thought, I can't do this. There's nothing authentic about this. It just seems all ridiculous. I can get away with a bandana now for 10 minutes and I shop as little as possible. But I find the whole thing so insane. And I was getting myself worked up into a lather because I'm like, I can't stand this. This is stupid. People aren't questioning it. They're just
Yeah.
blindly buying all of this. And then I realized, you know what, I can get myself all worked up and be just like irritated about this constantly, or I can just step back and observe this from a different perspective and look at the bigger meaning in all of this.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, again, this just brings me back to love, and it brings me back to compassion and tenderness and caring. And I realize I don't want to argue with anybody. You know, I honor people's beliefs. If they don't want to hug me anymore, it makes me feel sad, but I'll honor that. And then there are people that, you know, they could just, anyways, I just see the whole thing as a metaphor for the direction that we're already going, and that you presented so beautifully in your documentary, Michael. So it's just another layer of.
Yeah, the same thing. I mean, we haven't been hit Australia's been pretty lucky, actually. And where I live, even luckier. I know in Victoria down south, you know, they're on curfew from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. at the moment. And masks are compulsory and you get fined if you're outside of your house, outside of those times, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh my, wow.
Yeah, so they're in heavy, you know, they're in stage 4 or 5 lockdown. But for me, the COVID, what it's doing in my mind, all these structures that seem solid, and you know, I was aware of, you know, the coming breakdown. I was aware of that before COVID started, but then COVID comes in and all these solid structures suddenly aren't solid. There's this sort of wave, you know, businesses, you know, retail, restaurants, you know, sports, all these things that have been sort of these bedrocks of society. Nothing's solid anymore. Yeah. And so I feel this fluidity of I can see where we're going. Before it was theoretical. And COVID's got me like, okay, I can feel how this is going to be now when all these ideas of reality start falling away. This is sort of practice for the main event, you know, that's coming in a way. It starts to get my psyche adjusted. That's, you know, that's my take. But I do hear you around the loss of connection and love and hugging and touch and all of that that's come in through Corona, you know.
Yeah, and you know, and I live in Canada, and we have not been hard hit either, and yet the fear mindset, the whatever they call it, like protecting us or whatever it is they're protecting us through preventing us from connecting. And one thing I've certainly noticed through the people that I don't know anybody who's been hit by COVID. I don't know anybody who knows anybody who has been impacted by COVID. But I know a lot of people who have had and continue to have emotional and mental issues with the separation that's being imposed in the name of safety. I don't know a single person who's not being negatively impacted in that way. I know several people who are doing their best to adjust to it, and they're rationalizing it. But when I read between the lines, I can tell that they're hurting too. There's a sadness. There's a global sadness, and I'm certainly, there's a sweeping sadness of all the people in my life. And it doesn't matter where they're at in what they believe in our reality. Like, I have a sister, for instance, who believes that everything's going to get right back to normal again in the fall. And that's already being proven wrong, because they don't even know what they're going to be doing with schools in the fall. But that's her way of coping through this. But most people I know just are carrying a heavy sadness about all of this. And I feel like that's been the silenced killer in this whole pandemic, is how it's affecting people's livelihoods, the people's sense of meaning, people's emotional and mental state. And yeah, it's been interesting to see how it all plays out, because when I step back from this reality and I look at it from a broader perspective, I completely agree with what you said, Michael, about how it's just like, it's like the precursor to it's like a warm up for what's going to really happen when the shit goes down, which is happening pretty quickly when you look at what's happening up in the Arctic these days.
Yeah.
We're with Michael Shaw, who birthed a documentary, Living in the Time of Dying. What does that title mean to you, Michael?
Yes, well, it's a good point. Catherine Ingram gave me that title, and if you come from the perspective that we're in the time of dying, so sort of early on in that doco, I try to make that pretty clear, that we're here, this is happening, this is now, but the focus of the documentary really is how to live in the time of dying, and how to find purpose, meaning, life, how to be in life, at this time. And I think, I'm just wondering if I should share this, but I will. When I first really got exposed, when I first came to, this is where we are, there's no avoiding it. Things are going to get really messy, horrible, on just about every level you can think of, as our species either contracts massively in size or goes extinct. I was living with this thought of, well, the best way for me to approach that is, when it gets difficult, I'll choose an exit that pleases me. I'll go at my own time in a way that I choose, right? Rather than the 101 different ways that I was imagining that end might come. And I think it was really Stan, meeting with Stan, and partly Dahr as well, that brought a change to this of how do I live? How can I choose to live in a time of dying in a meaningful way, with, as Stan would say, following my sacred obligations as a human being. And so that thought really started to land, rather than how do I get out of this before it gets too hard, to how do I serve this situation in the fullest way that I can, and live my life to its end date, living in the best way that I can. And So the title speaks to that in me. It's living in the time of dying. You know, I know that's a big topic to open up there, but that's what it means. That's what it meant to me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Mm.
That's saying it in another way, but in a way that sometimes doesn't get talked about. So
Yeah.
thank you for going there.
Yeah.
Because being in this zone for as long as I have now, about over 7 years of daring to talk to people about who do we become if in fact these systems are collapsing, which seems certain. I don't know that there's a single human system that's working right now.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at the Arctic and you really start to understand what the melting ice means, let alone what's happening to the oceans and the trees and the you name it.
Yeah,
That
anywhere you look, right? Anywhere you look.
You can't really dream up a scenario where this turns around without some miracle, right? And some people hold out to that last thing. You know, you never know. You just never know. Maybe Gaia has a miracle up her sleeve and she's going to say...
The miracle up her sleeve would be to take us off the planet. Do you know what I mean? Before it's too late.
Hey, none of that.
That would be the miracle.
None of that, Michael. But daring to go there, right? That this is the next level.
Yeah.
So if we're living with death in mind, if we've all gotten a terminal diagnosis, right? Our species has gotten a terminal diagnosis. Now, we don't know how long we're going to have this cancer, if you will. It could be tomorrow. It could be that we go along with this craziness for 5 or 10 years, right? But much longer than that, I can't imagine things being anything near normal, right? Or what we've called normal. So who do I become? Who do I choose to be in this moment, knowing that I have a terminal diagnosis? And that's a whole different question than we've ever asked ourselves, unless you got a terminal diagnosis.
Yeah. I mean, I always, you know, I look, the truth is I hope that I'll be someone that I'm going to be proud of. I hope. I don't know till my, you know, till the rubber hits the road on that. But I go there with my deepest intention of how I want to meet those times. And I'm thinking about Viktor Frankl, you know, the book Search for Meaning, and, you know, his description that, you know, there were some people in the camps, the concentration camps, who were giving their last bit of bread away as they finished their lives. They were sacrificing, staying alive for another day or two to help somebody. And I hope, my hope for myself is that I head more in that direction than, you know, getting in a death struggle with someone for that piece of bread. That's my hope for myself. You know, but yet to be seen. Yeah,
but see, this is where my red flag goes up about presence. Because when you say hope, you're going to the future. And you're hoping you're going to be good in some future moment. And in this moment right now, Michael, August 18th at almost 8:00 p.m. Pacific time, hope doesn't play. You're daring to share your truth in this moment with Debbie and I, and that's all there is. Right? That's all there is. Now you can have this thinking that just for a moment, I sure hope I do good. Boom, get myself back, because hoping I do good starts with now. Right? And you're doing good now. And that's all there really is.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, because we, you know, it's possible to imagine any number of horrendous future possibilities, you know, which I'm, you know, can tend to on a bad day. So it's, you know, it's
or even imagine good futures, right? Or even to imagine good futures takes you away from now. And there's nothing wrong with imagining good or bad futures. We should make ourselves aware of the possibilities, but then get on back, right? Because how's that line go? If you want fear and worry, go hang out in the future. If you want guilt or shame, go hang out in the past. But if you don't want any of that, then get yourself back here. Right?
Well put, Peter.
There we are, daring to assist each other
Yeah.
and coming back to the present.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. Well put. Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Let's move into closing statements here and take 3 or 4 minutes each to kind of put a bow on this thing with where this has brought you. And I almost said where you want to go next, but that's another one of those things, right? Next is the foggy of the future. I don't want to know next, right? What's now? What else is alive now that you want to share at the end here, Deb? Why don't you go?
Well, this has been a great conversation,
Yeah.
and
Great conversation.
really great. And I really love what you said, Michael, about how you're a student. And I feel like there's just endless opportunities for learning throughout these these multiple realities that we're all navigating together at the same time. And I just, for me, my ultimate goal, if you want to call it that, is to be as fully present as often as possible. And
No,
not
stop. Fully present now.
Fully present now.
That now is all there is. Sorry, had to.
I mean, I do get caught up in the worry and the anxiety and the regret, and so the less I can bounce between those, the better. And so that's my aspiration as I keep moving into these multiple realities. And I feel like it doesn't take effort. And I'm sure you can both agree, because as things just seem to close in on us, it feels like presence becomes easier. So, yeah, I'm present with Chester right now.
There you go. Hello, Chester.
Thank you, Deb.
Chester.
Thank you.
Hello, you're famous, Chester. This is your 15 seconds of fame. Every cat's dream, right? Thank you, Deb, and thank you for all you have dared to share in the past and in the now. And why I called you, why I said I want you part of this. It's just like instantly when I connected with Michael's energy was like, oh my God, this has got to be Deb, right? She's got to be involved with this. So thank you. And
thank you. This has been such an honor to be with both of you.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, and I'll say, turbo same, following the heart, right? Like you talked about Dahr doing, and like you did, just said, I gotta talk to this guy. I don't have a big giant show or podcast to share this all to everybody, but I had a calling that said I'm supposed to talk to this guy. And for wherever this goes, or whoever's touched by any of this, it's all just about following that moment, just like you did to dare to make a documentary where you'd never done documentaries before, right? You told us before we came on, I didn't do any of this. I didn't even know what B-roll was, right? I didn't even know anything, but I got the calling and I went in that moment, in that feeling of presence that says, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then doing it and following that moment, following that thread, following that presence to be you. Somebody's got to be you, right? So thanks for being you, and thank you for how that's touched my life with your documentary and with all that's coming from that, because it doesn't stop, right? And as much as sometimes we might wish that it would, right? You've now taken those steps and you're into new worlds. And however that shows up for you in whatever you choose to share and not share, that you're doing it perfectly. That it's beautiful to get to connect with you and know that I have a new present moment friend that I know will bring me to my presence, like Deb has done for the years now that we've played. And thank you. And what a joy living in the time of dying, because we get real when we know it's ending. Right? We get real, and there's all the hugs, right? Oh, I'm leaving now. Now I can tell you how much I really love you, and I really want to give you a big hug, But we only met for 2 hours, but I didn't want to tell you that an hour and a half ago, because then I would have had to sit in the fact that I admitted that I love you for a whole hour and a half. Well, wait till I'm in the car. Oh, by the way, you're the greatest. Right. And here we are as a species navigating that same thing. And it's beautiful to be here with you right now, Michael.
Yeah, well, thank you both. Thank you both. It's been just sort of so lovely to hang out in this conversation. You know, there's not many people that I can hang out in these sorts of conversations with still. It's a very small group of people that I get to do that with. And it's just been, you know, a delight to feel the extended community, you know, across the globe on this.
Yeah, and on that point, real quick before you finish, there are groups, there are live, I'm part of a live Zoom call that happens 12 hours a day called theconversation.cc, where we're daring to say, anytime, come, you can meet tribe who will talk about this. And I want to have you on there to share. We want to do a movie night and share your movie and then sit with this group of people and talk about it. Right. And these kinds of connections are happening now because we're overflowed with content. And now we want connection. And connection comes from this, daring to be present with someone face to face and say, wow, how does it feel? How does it feel to be you? What are you going through? It's completely different than what I'm going through, probably, and maybe not at all. Right. And so thank you, and know that there's more happening with that. And in that, please continue putting the bow on this beautiful talk with us.
Well, you know, what to say, you know, that hasn't been said. You know, I'm just thinking of this, you know, I'm just thinking of Dahr's coming into my mind right now, and that whole message that he had about the, you know, the importance of listening. And, you you listen, you contact me, Deb, you listen, and you write your blog, and then you follow it up with your book, and all these actions that come through us, first of all, come from that deep listening, that deep feeling about what's true. And so, you know, you know, if I think about, you know, how I want to be, it's to keep coming back to that listening and acting from that place as much as I can, as, you know, as deeply as I can.
Yes. That's really well said, Michael. That the listening is what starts it, right? And there's a sharper listening that's happening for a lot of people now. And with the sense that our time is short, or just shortened, right? That there's a quicker draw to want to act on that listening that we don't have forever. I can remember when this all hit me. It's like I used to think of spirituality was something I was going to play with for the next 30 years. But all of a sudden, spirituality becomes a very present moment thing. Who am I? Who do I think I am? And what do I think I'm doing? Right? And when I can live from those questions in this moment, then every new listening, the listening is different, and therefore the actions are different. What a joy. Thank you both so very much.
Thank you. Wonderful to speak with you. Yeah.
LivingintheTimeOfDying.com. Check it out. Share with friends. Support this beautiful man and his heartfelt mission. And we'll be talking again soon, Michael.
We will be. I'm sure of that. Yeah. To each of you. Yeah. Okay.
Blessings.
Thanks,
Be
Michael.
well,
Thanks,
okay.
Peter.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.